3D Pokemon battles are something we take for granted nowadays, since, well, the games are in 3D. But once upon a time, they used to be quite a novelty, and there was even a specific side series of Pokemon games dedicated just to making 3D battles happen. I am of course referring to the Stadium series, which, as far as I'm concerned, consists of Stadium Japan, Stadium 1, Stadium 2, Pokemon Coliseum, Pokemon XD, and Pokemon Battle Revolution. These games are often fondly remembered by casual fans for its Pokemon full of personality, challenging cups, fun minigames, and edgy cringe fanfiction. But for competitive players, these games are often small footnotes, because for whatever reason, each game tends to have differences from their main series counterparts. That means the battles on them would not be the same as the battles on an actual cartridge. What am I talking about here? What do you mean the battles I did on Pokemon Stadium 2 wouldn't be the same as doing a Link battle in Pokemon Gold and Silver? Well, let me show you some examples. And the biggest one is that all of these games have Team Preview enabled by default, and you cannot turn this off. Team Preview is used most often in the official metagames like VGC or Nintendo Cup. But because this was not built into cartridges, Smogon Play does not use it until Black and White, when it was officially introduced into the main series. And in addition to Team Preview, each one of these games has a bunch of minor differences from each other, yes, but also from the games that they are meant to be connecting to. Stadium 1 actually has so many that it was implemented into Pokemon Showdown as a separate metagame, so I can't really cover any of them here. But if you're interested in it, check out this video by Plague Von Karma. She covers a bunch of really good specifics about the metagames and what makes it differences and why it's not more popular. In Stadium 2, sleep is significantly shorter than in the main series games. And it also shows the player's current and max HP at the same time on screen, something no game has ever done in the main series. In Gen 3, Coliseum and XD end turn effects like item activation or Sandstorm Chip based on who moved faster on that turn, rather than what the Pokemon's speed is. It also has the same HP mechanic as Stadium 2, and it's actually a bigger deal here. It lets players figure out potential EV spreads, since EVs cannot be maximized like they could in Gen 2. And this all kind of sucks. It really does, because it'd be cool to see competitive play with the spectacle that it deserves. A lot of people try to write off spectacle, as in, this isn't something that you need for the game to be good, and that's totally true. But I think there's something to be said when some die-hard Pokemon Showdown fans, someone like Jimothy Cool for example, gets a huge kick out of doing net play in Gen 3 with me. Not what it looks like at all.
That's a good animation. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And Heracross flies back to the... after getting bumped a little bit, he's... Alright.
Who even knew that Heracross had wings?
We're gonna bring the wings
Who knew
out
such a thing?
Return to position.
Watching all of the animations and seeing all the different Pokemon models, stuff like that. I think it can be, it can bring a different experience to the game, even if it's not what makes an actual battle good, right? But what about Pokemon Battle Revolution? After all, Gen 4 is where my passion for competitive play lies. Well, it is somehow the best of all of these games insofar as replicating the cartridge mechanics, but it falls flat for 4 key reasons. Just like all the other Stadium likes, it has Team Preview. And no Team Preview is very important in Gen 4, thanks to the nature of its lead metagame. But additionally, this is the only gen that VGC doesn't use Team Preview in. So much so, and I'm not kidding here, that official VGC tournaments use a modded version of this game without Team Preview so they could do Diamond and Pearl matches with nice graphics. And they never released this to the public. It even had the models for the Platinum trainers, but it didn't have the alternative forms. And speaking of, it doesn't have any of the Platinum forms. This is Shaman Sky, Giratina Origin, and those, they don't matter that much since they're banned from standard play, and in VGC you couldn't even use Shaman Sky in a restricted format. But the Rotom Forms are some of the best Pokemon in the generation, and they're not playable. Competitive play is very, very different without them, and I would actually argue worse. What, am I going to use Dusknoir? Yeah, I know Spiritomb is probably who would actually be the good Pokemon here, but I just needed to rag on Dusknoir, okay? It stinks.
Bruh.
The third problem is that it has less level options, and what do I mean by this? Well, in PBR, you can make a customized rule set, which seems like it'd be pretty good, right? You can select if the Pokemon have item clauses, if there's a freeze clause, if there's a sleep clause, etc., right? But the only level options are either free level or level 50. In Gen 4, you can auto-level to 100, which is great for Smogon play, because Smogon is played at level 100. I know, technically it's free level, so you could bring like a level 1 Rattata and do the Fear strat if you wanted, but in a Wi-Fi battle, this doesn't matter because it's not a serious tournament setting, and it allows people who EV train and breed their Pokemon on their own, like I do, to not have to level Pokemon up to 100, or even to 50, because in Gen 4, leveling is not fast. It's really, really, really slow. And so I can have this Gliscor, who is fully EV trained, has all the moves it needs, and is level 16, and when I bring them into a Wi-Fi battle, it's level 100. So PBR not having this is a really big blow. Last but not least, Hypnosis actually has 70% accuracy in this game instead of 60. I have no idea what Game Freak dev thought that this was a good decision, but you are a lunatic. This was a change that only existed in Diamond and Pearl and was quickly nerfed by the time Platinum came around. I don't know, I have no words for this, but it's not a huge problem, but it is a buff to Gengar, which honestly isn't necessary. So what can be done about all of these problems? Well, after helping my friend Papa Hefe make Coliseum and XD more like the main series Gen 3 games, I decided to take a solo look at Battle Revolution to see if I could bring it up to speed with the cartridge mechanics of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, so people could battle online and have nice visuals while doing it. And also, I think PBR is actually more fast-paced than the Gen 4 cartridge games, so it could be nice in that respect as well. Before I explain any of what I did, I want to thank the GameCube/Wii Pokemon ROM hacking Discord. A bunch of people who are smarter, hotter, and more talented than me made a bunch of tools and documentation that I absolutely needed to do any of these mods. The first thing I looked to tackle was a team preview removal code. Since I did that in Pokemon XD, I figured it'd be where I start here. Couldn't be that hard, right? Well, it wasn't, but that's not because I did anything. That's because Stars, the admin of the Discord and technical whiz, already wrote one years ago. This will make all the Pokemon invisible and remove their names. It technically shows that they have items still, but that's okay. Acrobatics isn't in this gen, so I don't think it's a big deal to see that the Pokemon that you're playing has an item. It doesn't show what item it is, right? I did the Rotom Forms next, and this is going to be a lot of work. At first, it seemed easy, because this tool called PBR Hex will let me replace any Pokemon or add a new form to it with the push of a button. I can easily type whatever base stat I want, what ability, etc., with typing, everything. But then when you load up the game, it's just a substitute doll. I mean, yes, this technically works for battles, so I could stop here if I really wanted to, but as we talked about earlier, half the fun is actually seeing the little guy using the animations in battle. So I had to get to work adding Rotom's 3D models from the Gen 6 games. There's no formal guide for this, but a few users wrote out very detailed instructions on how to use the 3D modeling tool Blender to export models in a format that PBR Hex can understand. Now, if you have never used Blender before, like I hadn't, this is insane. It plops you down with the cube and 5 trillion settings and dials and menus, and it was too much input for me. I felt like I had sensory overload. Luckily, the instructions in this thread were pretty specific insofar as how to get the model in, exported, and done. I just have to shrink Rotom down, set its Gen 7 animations to the appropriate Pokemon Battle Revolution animations, and then export it as a PBR model. So, thank you again for these wonderful, wonderful instructions. When I import Rotom's form via PBR Hex, it's, unwell? Why you sleeping, buddy? I must have spent 5 hours trying to figure out what I was doing wrong before I asked for help, just because I didn't want to bother anybody. And it turns out I did literally nothing wrong. It's just the version of Blender that I was using. That's it. The plugin doesn't work on the newer versions. So, one down later of an older version of Blender, and the issue is fixed. Rotom is upright and has cute little animations. Sometimes the oven glitches out a little bit, but I think that's okay. I also had to make the icons that Rotom will use. These are for the box where you can just sort through the Pokemon that you have, and that shows the whole Pokemon. And one for when you're in a battle, and this just mostly shows a Pokemon's face, it's kind of more zoomed in. I did this by downloading the Pokemon Home 3D models, and then conforming them to these size restraints, and I used these little templates that they had for the circles for the party and for the in-battle sprites. And I'm almost done, but there is one big problem, which is Rotom's death animation when getting hit specifically by a physical and contact move. The camera doesn't seem to like it very much. I'm not 100% sure why this was happening, but I think it's because the model doesn't seem to have the bone structure that Pokemon Battle Revolution expects, and the camera freaks out because of this. Usually, it seems that a Pokemon would have like a head bone or a neck bone to direct the camera, but Rotom doesn't have either of those. The highest bone that it has seems to be waist. So I had to figure out how to fix this. And I ended up just manually adding a new bone to fix things, and it worked. Now I just had to repeat this process 4 more times for grass, water, flying, and ice Rotoms. But, wait a minute. Rotom Forms aren't, like, in Pokemon Battle Revolution. Like, how am I getting them into the game? Well, I've been hacking it in via PK Hex, but the way to do so is very cumbersome. Typically, even in PK Hacks mode, this tool will not let me edit a Battle Revolution save with a Rotom form, because it is not possible for that Pokemon to appear in the game. However, you can, using the batch editor tool, force illegal forms and species into older games. Maybe in case you want to get a glitch Pokemon or something in them. I'm not really sure. This works fine for me while I'm developing this mod, but if this is something I want Gen 4 gamers, TM, to actually use, literally, ever, then I need a better way. So I downloaded PK Hex's source code and edited it so you can just change the Rotom's form there. I asked the PK Hex devs for advice on how to do it, but I ended up using a different method than what was suggested to me. Basically, I just tell PK Hex that PBR is actually a Heart Gold and Soul Silver game, so it'll let me put any Rotom form there instead. So the download for this mod will also come with this specific version of PK Hex that I edited. This also kind of fixes the level 100 thing for me. I mean, if you have to use PK Hex to play with Rotom, you can just use it to set your Pokemon to level 100, right? But why is PBR not recognizing Rotom's forms naturally? They're in the game now. Shouldn't it just see the forms on a cartridge and know that they're legal? Well, the truth is, I'm not actually sure where the legality check is done. I'm pretty sure it's during this little app that the DS is running when transferring Pokemon or connecting to the DS to do a battle. I know this because if I set Rotom's level up moves to include Overheat, for example, then I do a DS battle, Rotom still gets that move deleted. This means the changes I did on PBR itself didn't actually matter. It's the same when you transfer a Pokemon from the DS. I'm not 100% happy that you need PK Hex in order to even use this mod, but I think I'll have to accept it for now. I think in 90% of cases, people are probably just PK Hexing their teams in anyway. Most people aren't breeding their own teams, even if it's for a Wi-Fi battle, right? That wasn't true in 2006. That's not going to be true now. The last thing I need to do is update Hypnosis's accuracy. I have to use a different tool for this called PBR tool, and it's made by Stars. This will let me export a list of moves into a CSV file and edit the move's attributes. So I just change the 70% on Hypnosis to 60% and I rebuild the ISO. At this point, the mod's done. All the Rotom forms are in the game, and you can play with no team preview online. It's an authentic Platinum / Heart Gold Soul Silver Smogon OU experience, and you could even use it to replicate VGC metas now, since team preview is removed. I'll now quickly cover how to set up the mod and play on Wi-Fi too. This will work for both an actual Wii and for the emulator Dolphin. So to patch the game, you're going to need to download this XDelta patcher from romhacking.net. I already have it downloaded, but once it's downloaded, make sure that XDelta and XDeltaUI.exe are in the same folder, and also put your European Pokemon Battle Revolution ISO. Again, it has to be the PAL version of it. I backed this up using the backup tool for the Wii Homebrew channel, and then the XDelta patch that I will provide. So I'll click on XDeltaUI.exe. I'm going to open the patch, click that, I'm going to open the source file. Got to get back to it. It is in a weird folder. All right, so there is the ISO that I'm patching, and then we're going to name the output file. We're going to name it PBR Rotom fix.iso, and I'm going to click save here, and then I'm going to click patch. Now this is going to take some time because, as you can see, my patch file is like a gig, and then EU clean is like 4 gigs. So this is going to take some amount of time. Don't worry if it just takes a little while or anything like that. But once you're done with this, this is everything except team preview removal, because team preview removal is a gecko code. So you're going to need to apply that via Dolphin or via the like ISO loader that you're using on your Wii. So I'll show you how to do that after the patch is done. Okay, as you can see, it says file patched successfully. So once the patch is done, all you have to do is open up Dolphin and right-click whichever copy of Pokemon Battle Revolution that you're going to be using, and then go into AR codes and paste the code that I provide here. This is the code that Stars made that will load in Dolphin. If you need to learn how to use it for your USB loader or something like that, you're going to have to look up your own guide. Every USB loader is going to work a little bit differently. So I'm not going to be able to give 100% advice on how to do that. In addition, if you want to play online, I will link a guide on how to use WeMMV to play online in the description as well. But I should note, this game is already patched for WeMMV, so it should already just work out of the box. You just need to be able to connect to a specific DNS. All right, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.